It's Jackie. Today on the Natural Healing Wheel, the podcast that heals, I have Annie Alexander. And I am really looking forward to this conversation because there's a lot of knowledge here from her that I don't know about. I've not really had an experience with somebody of her education. She is a PhD in clinical psychology, an evolutionary astrologer, a linguistic, is that how you say that? Linguistic programming practitioner. She has a hypnosis center in the Northwest, and she helps people break free from their thoughts of limiting negative behaviors. And her motto is "We move minds," which I love. Love that a lot. So she has a whole lot more to share. She's a very, very educated woman here. So I'm going to let her share the rest of her brilliance that she has brought forth for us to help us heal. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you, Jackie. I will share wherever it is that the road takes us. Yes. And we may not have enough time for everything, but we can squeeze in a few things.
Well, we can meet again, so we can talk about a few, some of your topics that because they're very big topics. And so do we want to start with served as a psychologist consultant for the San Diego Police Department? That's cool, working for them, helping them heal PTSD. So I mean, you've got some incredible healing knowledge and tools. So where would we get to start with this?
Well, I did that shortly after I got my PhD, and I thought, oh, I'm going to be a cop, and they made me a reserve cop, so I had to go through the academy. That was a lot of fun. And then I became a consultant to them, working with their shift command supervisors and dealing with their street officers who were suffering from PTSD, which is a pretty common thing when you're on the police force. Probably more common today than it was then, but still common. And that was fun. I got to work on their serial killer profiling team with an FBI agent. And I learned a lot about things, characteristics to look for. And, I also had concomitantly at the same time, I had a private practice working with survivors of trauma and abuse. And I just continued that. So it was a good blend. It was really just a wonderful thing to do. And one day, someone came to me and said, hey, this was in San Diego. A psychiatrist friend came to me and said, hey, there's a job in a prison in Colorado. And I'd always wanted to live in Colorado. So I had applied for a job in Seattle and didn't get it. And so when he called me the next week, he said, are you interested? And I said, heck yeah. And so off I went to interview, and I got the job, and I stayed there for 30 years. So I ran this mental health department in a prison for a number of years.
Wow.
And then,
holy cow.
Wait, here's another one. And one day, a guy walked into my office, my substance abuse, my addictions counselor walked into my office, and he said, hey, my grandmother is starting an addiction center in Aspen. And I thought, well, that's a good place for it. And he said, do you want to move there and we can open up a center? And I looked around at the prison and I said, yeah, I think so. So we built this center over in Aspen, and I lived there for a number of years. And a whole bunch of things happened. Oh, I know. Some family interruptions occurred. I had to go back to the Scottsdale area and take care of some family. And then I got sidetracked. And then I ended up back in Colorado, but in Boulder. Then I opened up my private practice again. And then I opened up another office in Breckenridge and did a few things there. I'm trying to track everything that I've done. It's not easy. I bounce back and forth between Scottsdale and Boulder quite a bit. And then I was in Boulder for many years. And then things just started to come to a close. And I thought, this is looking suspicious. I think I better look at Seattle again. So I put Seattle on my radar, and lo and behold, I got a job in Seattle and moved. And that was 10 years ago. And so somewhere up and down the line, about 7 or 8 years ago, I moved up to Bellingham because I got a whiff of Bellingham when I was in Seattle and went, oh, that's where I'm supposed to be. Here I am. And so now we can catch up.
So we're neighbors. I'm just across the line from you, which I think is really cool. And Bellingham is a great little place, isn't it?
It is.
So yeah, it's very special, that whole area in there. So you use root cause hypnotherapy and evolutionary astrology. I'm not sure why I'm not pronouncing my words. I think I'm a little tired today, excuse me. And with these two modalities, you combine them for the superior results.
I think
What
so.
does that mean?
I think so. Well, first of all, I can do them separately and stand alone. It just depends upon what a client wants and needs. But when I combine them, having a blueprint, the evolutionary astrology is really a blueprint of where the soul has been, what what we've all been working on, and what we're working on. Why are we back here in this lifetime? What are we supposed to be doing with what we know? And where are we supposed to be going with it? And why do we have all these repetitive patterns and problems and challenges? And it's not really simple. It's very longitudinal. In other words, we've been carrying around a lot of baggage for many lifetimes. So we show up in this lifetime, and mostly our soul says, oh, I guess I'll work on this thing again. And sometimes our soul says, no way, I'm not going to work on this. I'm taking a pass. And we see those people around us who seem to be very happy-go-lucky and carefree, as well as the people who are pretty resistant to,
Yeah.
I want to do it my way. I'm not going to do what you say. I'm only doing blah, 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 and all those things. And those are people who are resistant to their soul's path and the programming for that lifetime. So when I get a hold of a natal chart, I can see all that in the chart, and it laser focuses the issues. So if somebody were to come to me for hypnotherapy and say, I got this anxiety, I just wrote this piece this morning, so I'm extracting this as an example. I've got this anxiety and it's been with me since I was a kid, and I have no idea what caused it, but can you help me fix it? And I was like, yeah, sure, most likely. If I get a hold of their chart and I can see enough of the thematics, not necessarily the content, but just the themes, they've been carrying around, then I have a really good place to start. So you can discuss that with the client and then say, you know what, we can use hypnotherapy to resolve that. So it becomes a starting point, astrology, that's the laser focus, and then hypnotherapy becomes the resolution modality. So it works really well, and I hadn't really thought about combining them until one day I just did and went, wow, this is a ton of information. Why don't I do this?
Yeah, because you have the blueprint. You can see yeah. And I can attest to that because you did a small bit of work for me, which was very, very, very powerful, very cool. I'm really excited to get some of this going for myself because it's really interesting, first of all, and to have somebody say to you, and it lands, for some reason that is true.
It resonates.
Yeah, pardon?
It resonates?
Yes, it resonates. Just, yeah. So the astrology part of it, I think you had said something to me and my boyfriend have been in this a few lifetimes, right? And I've always known that. I just know that. How do I know that? Right? So to have somebody say that to you, it was like, oh, that's kind of I don't know. Those are really, just because we don't see that and we haven't been educated in what you're doing for healing, it's really mind-blowing, right? To have that kind of insight, I guess, right?
It really cuts to the chase. I'll give you an example. A woman I hadn't talked to, an astrology client, in 7 years. She was pregnant with her daughter, almost ready to give birth last time I talked to her. And apparently, I don't remember this, but she said, I'd love to have a reading for my daughter. And I said, great, I do readings for newborns. That's exciting, for parents. But apparently I told her, let's do a reading in 7 years. So here we are 7 years later. She gets in touch with me and says, I'd really like to do that reading. Gosh, I don't remember saying that, but okay. So do this reading, and her daughter's having some behavioral problems. So I read her daughter's chart, I read her chart, but I put the two charts together in what we call a compatibility or relationship reading. And I actually overlaid the charts, superimposed one on the other, and I could see that they had known each other quite intimately in prior lifetimes, and they'd probably been mother-daughter, father-son, some sort of real close first-generation family relationship. And with those two charts together, I was able to see not only what the issues were, but what they were working on in this lifetime. And it was really useful for the mom because she was thinking, oh my God, do I need to take my daughter to a therapist or something like that? And I said, well, of course you can if you want to, but here's the issue. And so now you get to work on it the way that you see fit, the way that you feel is appropriate. And I had a few suggestions for how to work with her daughter. Ultimately, the choice is hers. But I mean, inside of an hour and a half or 2 hours to be able to see that clearly, because mom had written me and said, blah, 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 what am I missing? And so I looked at the chart and I said, very first thing I said to mom last night was, well, you're not missing anything. You would never have known this. Somebody hadn't done an EA, Evolutionary Astrology reading, or some kind of reading where you could get that past life influence and know the chart and then be able to spell it out for you. You would never have really known that unless somewhere deep within you, you knew it. So it's very cool.
It really is. And I think when you understand that you're carrying these patterns and energies, not only from your past lifetimes, but from our ancestors as well, right? So
Yep.
We don't even realize that. And some days we're feeling really heavy and attracting a lot of crap, right? That's what I'm understanding and learning. And it's really exciting information because it really is the point where we can shift.
It is. The insights are what cause an instantaneous aha, which actually does rewire the brain. So even though I didn't do hypnotherapy yet with this woman last night that I mentioned, I just did the astrology. I could see all the light bulbs going off in her head, and I knew that things would shift. I'll give you another example. I was doing a hypnotherapy session with a woman, and we were just working on her issues. She wanted to stop drinking. Okay, just working on her issues. But somewhere in there, she spontaneously slipped into a past life. We hadn't discussed it, but she did. I figured it out, but we ran with it. And it turns out she had had a pain in this current life that I didn't know about in one spot in her tummy. And in every past life, she'd had the same pain. And in every past life scene, I think she went back to 2 or 3 of them. In one of them, she got knifed in that area and died. In another one, that was as a man. In another one, she was a woman and she had some sort of pain right in that same spot in her tummy, and it caused her death. I don't know what it was. She doesn't know what it was. And in this lifetime, she's carried around that same pain. But when she emerged from hypnosis, for the first time, she's over 60. For the first time, the pain really wasn't there, and it had been there her whole life. And she said, I feel it's more of a dull ache, but it's not a pain. And so the highlighting of that insight and the information that she gained from spontaneously doing a past life was tied to what 60 plus years of this life's pain was all about. And it was well on its way to resolving just because she had that insight in the information.
And so I've experienced this. Really, I've really been doing some work because I've just been phase planted for so deep and so long. So apparently I'm supposed to be very grateful for that. And so I believe now that I'm understanding and able to get out of the victim and be able to try to create a new thought pattern and a story. That's the difficulty. It's a lot of work to retrain. And first of all, to know that story and chatter and negative and understand that it could be the lifetimes that we're hurting it from, and then understand that we can't heal it from that space because we're in a victim, and that's a society has taught us all that, I believe, right? Because none of us are moving out of it. We're all, it's the blame shame game, and we can't shift or heal from that. But yeah, when I was able to see it from this space that you're talking about and understanding that, it really does. Like you feel the energy in your body lighter. It is such an aha. It's really incredible, powerful work, really.
It is.
I'm
And
excited about this Can you explain to
okay.
us that don't know about hypnotherapy? Tell us about it. Like,
Okay.
what would I experience? I would come and see you, and what would happen?
Well, I don't know. That's number one. Is I really don't know.
Okay, so I'm playing at the doctor on the couch and you're laying on the bed, that for us
You
that
know,
not have it.
I was just about getting ready to do a YouTube video on what hypnosis is not, and it's not that. So that reminded me. First of all, you'd probably be sitting up like you are now because we don't want you sleeping, because it's not sleep. It's just exactly what we're doing now. The only difference is you probably have your eyes closed because it just is easier, less distractions, and it takes your focus to a more deep level. So it's easier when your eyes are closed. But we're talking back and forth just like this. And the difference is that your brain waves have slowed down. And that's why it looks like relaxation. That's why hypnosis looks like, oh, I'm just chilling here. Because let's see, beta waves, which are normal, everyday, hey, I'm driving to the grocery store, just having a conversation kind of waves, to alpha waves, which are slower, then into theta waves, which are slower, then possibly into delta waves, which are low and slow. It's more like REM sleep. So still, you wouldn't be sleeping, but your brain waves can slow down. And when your brain waves slow down, imagine yourself being in slow motion. Although it doesn't feel like this, it doesn't look like this, but it's what happens when you're in slow motion. You notice the details. You can see things that you don't see when you're in a hurry, right? Yeah. So when your brain waves slow down, you feel things, you notice things, you remember things. You can get your head wrapped around things that when you're going 100 miles an hour and multitasking, you don't have time to notice. So it actually puts those things that are already in front of you, still in front of you, but in a way that you can go, oh, hey, what's that? And you can actually investigate it. You can rummage around in it. And you get a lot of information that way.
Because I always feel like I need the time to process this stuff. These things will happen, but then you got to run and go do this and this and this and this. And then I'm sometimes feeling like, okay, well, I still need to process all of that information. And so that totally makes sense.
Yeah. So it's giving yourself space and time to process it. Plus, you're processing it with a qualified facilitator, such as myself. And when we're just working on our own, our mind tends to be a little resistant, guarded. It tends to get distracted and think about, oh, what do we have to do this evening? And then we get pulled off track, and then we forget where we are when we want to go back. Sometimes we forget to go back. So we don't always move through everything that way. So having a facilitator is extraordinarily useful.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because you're cutting off years of being stuck there, first of all. Like, I just don't believe that with what I know now and what the stuff that I've understood and worked through for a lifetime, I've really enjoyed and had a real curiosity and interest in this type of field, like all the different healing modalities and energetically how we work in the quantum field. I love all that stuff. There's just it's so big and it's so much that there's no way. And then we can't see ourselves. Like, we just can't see ourselves. We can point fingers and be like, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. It's all like our stuff, but we don't understand it. We don't understand how to process it. So then we go into blaming ourselves, we're shaming ourselves again. And then we're now back at zero because we're not understanding what's happening.
Right. You can take yourself back to square one very easily. And so the deal with hypnotherapy and with me, with having a mental health background so that I can facilitate that really better than most hypnotherapists. I don't mean that to sound egotistical. It's just not first of all, I'm board certified. And secondly, I have decades behind me in working with trauma. And that's not what every hypnotherapist brings to the table. But thirdly, I do root cause hypnotherapy. And so I'm probably only about 5% of hypnotherapists who do that. And so when you combine...
And what is that? What is the difference there?
As opposed to giving you direct suggestion and saying, you're now anchored to, and we're going to create an anchor for you that's positive. You're now anchored to this really positive thing, such as your cat's sitting on your lap purring. So every time you get into this space where you feel a little anxious or you're feeling whatever, I just want you to feel Spot, the cat named Spot, sitting on your lap and purring, and we'll anchor you. So what it's doing is creating, through direct suggestion, creating a redirection in your mind to go back to something that feels positive, safe, and secure, so as to feel like, oh, I'm in control of my anxiety. And that's okay. You know, it works in a New York minute, but it's not going to resolve what's continuing to cause the anxiety, which will, it's like water, it always finds a way back to creep back into your life unless you seal the joints. And so with root cause hypnotherapy, we're going to seal up those loose joints. Not only are we going to seal the joints, but we're going to go back to where it started. So it could be age 5, age 2, in the womb, last lifetime, 500 lifetimes ago. I don't know. Only the subconscious mind will know. But we're going to go back to where that pattern first began. Let me give you an example. So I worked with this man a number of years ago. He was 30 at the time, and he had chronic tummy issues, stomach problems, and anxiety since he was a little kid. He was just a handful for his mama. By the time he's 30, he comes to me and he goes, "Hey, Dr. Annie, I really want to get rid of this anxiety. And, oh, by the way, you know, he's busy taking pills while we're talking." And I go, "What are those for?" And he goes, "I have a stomach ache because talking about this stuff makes my stomach hurt, blah, blah." And I go, "Oh, how long you been doing that?" And he goes, "Forever, blah, blah." Anyway, so we go through a couple of sessions. And in this one session in particular, without setting it up as a past life regression, he slips into a past life regression, which was fine with him because he was just, you know, recounting some stuff. But I recognized it as, oh, we're not in this lifetime anymore. So I kind of qualified it, asked him a few questions, figured out, we're not in this lifetime. Oh, we're in a past life. Okay, that's just fine. Turns out he was in the Civil War, and he was fighting in the Civil War as a frontline soldier. He got shot. He died. He got shot in the stomach. He died on the battlefield. And his dying thoughts were that, what about my wife and my 2 little girls who are at home? I'll never see them again. And sure enough, he didn't. And so he was very anxious, even while he was dying, because he knew that the Civil War is going on. I should be at home protecting them. I'll never return home to be able to keep them safe. Plus, he's encountered this huge loss for himself, plus the loss for them that he'll never get to really interact with. Anyway, move forward. We bring this information forward and integrate it into this current life's data bank and knowledge and information. He feels a lot better. His stomach had stopped hurting in the middle of the session. I did a few more sessions with him. His stomach never hurt again. I was in touch with him. We did a session here and there over the years. It's been now 5 or 6 years. His stomach never hurt again. And previous to this, he was only able to kind of keep a relationship for, really solidly for only a couple months. It was never anything long term. But at this point in time, he's been in a relationship for over 6 years, and he's pretty happy. And the reason for that is that this tour back into the past life revealed where his anxiety about losing relationships started. And once he reclaimed that information, he was able to then apply it in this life and realize, I'm okay. I can get into a new relationship and I can hold on to it. And his stomach never hurt again, because he got to the bottom of why it had been hurting his whole life, which was a memory. So it was locked into his DNA as a body memory that he couldn't solve with any bit of logic or intelligence. And he's a pretty smart guy. So that's a cool story.
That's a great story. It's, you know what, and it's a great story. I know that for myself, I'll have been having, like, doing counseling and literally put my rib out in the back, like my heart chakra area. Not once did I do that during counseling, but twice, literally put my back out where I'm like seized, going, incredible what we're holding on to. And we don't know where it's from. We don't know if it's ours. We don't understand that we're absorbing negative energies from other people's crap, even in their space. Like this knowledge is so, it's so important. And to have somebody like with your experience and your knowledge, it's really, really, really excited to have met you.
Oh,
So
thank you.
yeah, I'm excited to come and do some of the work with you because
That'd be great.
yeah, I know that the thoughts and then the feelings, and then all of a sudden we're manifesting kind of more of whatever we're thinking and feeling about, right? And even
It is.
understanding that to shift all of that with, the 50, 70,000 thoughts that are happening in our subconscious every day. It's just to be the watcher of it is depressing. Once you learn how to do that, I felt like once I started to listen to, wow, I had no idea. Beating myself up all day, should have known better, should have done better, should have, how'd you do this again? I thought you healed this. But like, it's incredible. And yeah, it's just incredible. And we don't even know. We don't know that we're doing that
We
to
don't.
ourselves.
And we tend to do what most people do, which is to anchor it or hook it to, oh, this is the way my dad was, or this is the way my mom was, or this is the kind of family I grew up in. And that's okay. And there are a lot of people, I have a lot of hypnotherapy clients. I was doing a session with someone actually last Friday, and she came upon something, and it was clear to me, oh, this sounds like a past life thing. It was just absolutely huge. It was so huge, it was like a boulder, and she just bam, ran into it. And there was a moment of silence, and I said, let me ask you a question. I said this to my client in hypnosis. I said, you've just run into something, right? And she went, huh? And I said, do you feel like this thing that this wall, this belief that you've just run into, has that been with you this lifetime? Did that does that feel like does it feel like it's older than that? I'm trying to remember, I'm paraphrasing how I asked her, because I want to ask these things neutrally. I don't want to infer anything, and I don't want to superimpose any thoughts that I have about that. I just simply want to extract from clients whether or not they think this has been with them for a long time, or this occurred as a result of however they grew up. And she said, and we have never talked about past life stuff. She said to me, no, I think this has been with me a long time. I don't even know what her beliefs about that are. I just know that's what she said. So I then said to her, okay, I think I agree with you based upon how it feels. Do you think that we can resolve this based upon the information they have in this lifetime, or do you think you'd like to travel beyond this and go to where it first began? Gave her the option. She thought for a minute, and she said, no, I think we can get it resolved in this lifetime. And I said, okay, fine. And that's what we did. It was just that simple. I just needed her input. Did it begin in this lifetime? No. Obviously, she was clear about that, but she only wanted to address it from a right here and now perspective. And so we honored that, and we did that. And she's a lot better knowing that, oh, I now know something I didn't know before. And so she's going to be chewing on this for a while as to, what do I do with that?
Yeah. Yeah, just to understand it and to be able to have some insight into ourselves and our behavior, and the patterns are wicked. And when you're talking about that, as you know, I've been doing some work with a colleague of both of ours, Sandy Levy-Landine, and she has doing that type of work with me where I can literally see the pattern, but it's always a different, but that feeling, right? Like, it's like once, yeah, that feeling, it's like, oh my God, it's that same feeling from when I was a little girl, home with my dad. Like, it's really the same, which is bizarre, because you're thinking to yourself, okay, how can that be? Like, all these different relationships that I'm having. And so really what I see very clearly is that I have to create a new story. I have to clean out this, whether it's lifetimes, generation, whatever, however, and because I think I'm doing the work. I do the meditation. I go to Dr. Joe Dispenza course. I love all that stuff. And here I am, just smacking my head on the cement, literally, like, and going, okay, what?
Right? Well, you are doing the work. You're doing it in layers. However,
Layers and
layers and layers, and we're very layered. We're like the proverbial onion. And for some of us who are a little impatient, it's annoying. It's like this again. And so we want to get beyond that. And of course, we can only get beyond it in the best way that we can. But when we do root cause work, it's not to say you're going to get to the very bottom of it for sure, because it's still layered, meaning as much as your soul, as much as your ego / personality will allow you to do in that session is as far back as you can go. But the hypnosis modality and the evolutionary astrology laser focus allows us to see something we didn't see before. It's like going down the highway and you got your headlights on, but with hypnosis and astrology, we flip on the brights. So you're still going down the highway, you can just see further.
Yeah.
So you get to make some additional choices that you couldn't make without that technology.
Right, because I understand that we're usually only seeing a couple of pathways when something comes upon us, right? And we're dealing with an issue. We're only seeing, and I know for myself, I really only am seeing, oh no, I got to go back to this. So I then go into the fear of the past because that experience already happened. So by doing that, I'm then bringing that forth again for another experience of the fear that already happened. Does that make sense?
It does. And there are a couple ways to look at that. And I used this last night with a woman who spoke up with her daughter because she was very hesitant to address her feelings. And all of the issues that she's having with her 7-year-old are actually a reflection of what she, the mom, hasn't yet dealt with. And she realized that. She said, yeah, I had a teacher conference and the teacher was pointing, to my daughter saying, hey, here's how you can help her and do this and this. And the mom said, I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's what I haven't yet done. How am I going to help my daughter if I haven't yet done it? So then she gets in a session with me and I'm basically repeating the same information unbeknownst to me. And so it's hitting the mom twice, in a week. And she's going, oh my God, I have to do my own work.
Yeah, we're all mirrors of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when we're close with someone, they'll mirror us even more intensely.
But we don't know that. We just think they're annoying and they're doing this again.
We know it as long as we can keep that as a conscious thought. If it's never a thought that's entered our mind, of course we won't see it. But if to some degree we think, gosh, everybody mirrors back some aspect of our life, even things that are going on globally are mirroring back some aspect of what's going on within each of us. So the real issue becomes taking responsibility for what you've done, the way that you are, the way that you've already evolved, and where you are now. And responsibility means taking a look at the things that we've already pushed away or not being ready to look at, and then deciding, okay, when am I ready to look at it? That's one thing. The other thing is, for people like her who haven't dealt with their feelings at all, and it feels like a very scary proposition, I suggested to her, and I would suggest this to just about anybody, that you can take that third person stance and observe yourself having gone through these things, but doing so in the third person, or doing so from a great distance, or doing so in black and white, but not Technicolor, so that it feels less intense and you can look upon yourself as if you were someone else, so that you have the observer mind at access at your fingertips, which helps you better analyze the situation. The other thing to know about that is the past. It is not the present. So A, you don't have to repeat it. And B, you don't necessarily have to feel it in the same way in which it occurred the first time. However, there's a caveat, and that is the way we all evolve is through our emotional body. So nobody gets out of the theater without having to see the movie, so to speak. So at some level, the feeling state will have to be integrated, but it doesn't have to be trauma redo. It's just those insights need to be integrated.
Right. And I just think, just for myself, like there's just so much there that to be able to find on our own without having, somebody who is educated like yourself to be able to go, okay, this is just this, and then to be able to explain it and walk through it, and then to be able to actually feel the release of that is, it's worth any weight of gold. You know what I mean? It's just everything. It's
It
such
is.
don't know it. Like this whole taking accountability, we don't, we think we're taking ability. I don't think that we know how. Like our society, I perceive, is been based on victim and poor me. And we learn it from, we fall down and we're like, oh, it's for little babies, right? And so we're used to being coddled and looking for attention when we fall. And then I see, like, I could see it in my mom, right? It was like the victim, it got worse as she got older, right? And then I see it with my partner's says sometimes, it's just hard because I can see that my mom can't see, that so that whole separating ourselves and being able to see ourselves, like that's a whole technique in itself, or an awareness
An
that
awareness.
to understand, and how to when I was attached to something that was happening to me, I felt, right, that, and you're feeling attacked or violent or whatever, you're attached to it. You can't see yourself or step out of it when you don't have that experience or knowledge or understanding.
It is difficult, and I've run up against that many times myself, and I thank God for the tools that I've created so that I could at least ask myself the questions that keep me from going down into a rabbit hole that I can't come back from. And culturally speaking, in Western culture, we are not a culture of accountability the way that, let's say, Eastern cultures might be, or indigenous cultures that are, it's natural to be reflective. Yeah, absolutely. Culture plays a huge role. So the soul, the individual, has to really be invested in wanting to get to the bottom of things, because it's not the way, especially Western society, has been set up, which makes it difficult for what we might call alternative practitioners to thrive, because everything is predicated upon take this pill, call me next week. And that is okay sometimes, but you still got to do the work.
Yeah, because like the medication, it's a pileup. And so I just feel like I don't know that we have a choice but to do the work. It's how I feel about it, right? Because it's too painful. If you understand that we're in a pattern and it's just going to keep coming until we look at it and then have to see where it came from so we can release it and let go of it and stop, unconsciously beating ourselves up about that story. And it's just such an incredible work. It's incredible insight. And I'm really grateful that, we're able to explain this to people, because I just don't think we have the knowledge or the education, right? I don't even know I know what a hypnotherapist is, but if I understood actually the breakdown of coming to see you and what would happen, and then I would have this relief and I would have assistance that would get me through emotional baggage that would take me 10 years. I could probably move through that really quickly and be able to get on with a happier, healthier, peaceful, abundant living or whatever. It's just, I don't know, it's everything.
It is. And typically that's what it takes for most people, 5 to 6 sessions. So we do them in a series. Each session is 2 hours, an hour and a half, somewhere in there. But we set aside that time, and, we could do a couple sessions a week. It just depends upon how quickly you process material and how busy your schedule is. A lot of people just do 1 session a week. So if I can squeeze an extra one in there, we're done in a month. And if you think about lifetimes, or then think about decades of suffering in this lifetime, and then we say in a month, you will have a really solid foundation under you and have created new habit patterns to address this stuff. Be like, why aren't people just lining up to do this?
Because we don't know about it. We don't have the knowledge. We're not, I think we don't as a society go after things that we don't know about. Like it's like I ask questions, but what I found is that a lot of people don't want to look stupid. So they don't ask. So they don't know. So then they still don't know.
Right.
And if we have this knowledge and this understanding and it was more mainstream, well, I could go do this and this is what that would work, or I could go do this. Like if we just had the knowledge and the education of how powerful these modalities are, I think, well, and I believe that that is happening. Like I really believe people need to find something that's more than the doctor, the medication, the surgeries. Like it's just,
We really do need to attend to our self-care. And in the last few years in particular, despite, post-COVID issues, people are not doing a lot of self-care. They're doing just the opposite. It's like, oh, COVID, no, please. I don't want to be housebound. I want to just be out and I want to be enjoying life and I want to go on vacation. I want to do all this stuff. But we've just encountered a global shift where the whole world is shifting into a different pacing. Governmental administrations are changing, Canada's is changing, the US just changed, Germany just changed, France is changing, Italy just changed, and we're moving in a direction that doesn't appear to be leading edge the way we would hope for this point in time. We'll have to see where the new leadership is pointed and where we truly end up. But we are in a global shift where we can't sustain what we've been doing. And that's just a given. No matter what side of the fence you might be on, everybody knows we just can't sustain whatever it is that we've been doing that has caught my attention. So we do have to shift. So 2025 is a year of shift in whatever manner you choose to. So I just want to put that right up there on the dashboard.
and so what does that mean to you when we say it's a time of shift? What does that actually mean? Like it just, there's a lot of energy work that's happening, or everybody's going to be feeling more?
Yes. People are feeling the edginess of the global situation. Feels like standing on shifting sands for some of us. I tend to feel it literally, so sometimes it feels like there's an earthquake under me when there isn't, and that's just a sign that something is shifting somewhere in the earth and I don't happen to know where it is. I might read about it or hear about it later, but I'm feeling it right now. Other people just feel it in terms of feeling unstable, feeling insecure, hesitant to put forth their plans, knowing that they've strategized something, but not feeling that they have the green light to roll it out. I mean, there's just a myriad of ways, ongoing anxiety that people are attempting to deal with in a way that it's like, okay, I'm finally just going to take this medication. Can't stand this anxiety anymore. I don't know where it's coming from, and I got to get back to living life. People who are reinventing themselves right now and doing a lot of decluttering. On the other hand, somebody this morning just sent me a whole bunch of pictures of their kitchen and their pantry, and they've been talking about decluttering it for a year, and they finally just dragged everything out, put it on the floor, and I couldn't tell what was on the floor. It was a mess. And then they showed me pictures afterwards, and now I can see all that stuff's back on the shelves. It looks very neat and organized, and that's just a metaphor for what I think people are sifting through right now.
Yeah. I think that we always tend to think it's just us, right? But this is really, the energies are very intense for everybody, I believe, right?
Yeah. It really is. I think the political changes and the climate changes are really the two topics that have caught most people's attention in terms of shifts. And that's okay. Those are hooks to hang your hat on, but everybody's life is shifting as a result of those things. So even if you weren't actively in some sort of shift, or I can't do this anymore, or I've got to do something different, or I've got to change the way I'm doing business, even if it wasn't at that personal level, it's at enough of a global level, a consensus of things that are happening globally, that it's impacting you anyway.
Yeah. And that fear, right? The whole fear and separation and the divide of, that happened from that whole COVID experience is still really prevalent because it just continues, like World War III, and then this is happening, and then the fog, and like there's this constant fear of, how do I navigate moving forward? And global, like you said, right?
It is, and we have shifted, astrologically speaking, into, and I won't use any technical jargon, into a next 20-year cycle where we're moving into a rearranged, reassigned partnerships where we really don't know what's on the table. In other words, we're moving even more so into the unknown. And I think that in and of itself is creating a vibration, which even if people can't articulate it, can certainly feel it. They can try to label it, try to give meaning to it, and they'll call it, oh, well, my work just changed ownership, or, well, Italy just did this, or Germany just did that. But that's just an attempt to identify and locate the source of something when they can't, because it's energetic. And so we've moved into an energetic period where things are just up for grabs and we're not sure where they land or going to land. We almost can't make predictions until it's landed. And then we have to look at it and go, okay, what does this mean for me?
Yeah. Yeah, and then, there's talk that we're in a simulation and that simulation is ending now. And like, there's all of this stuff that, we don't know about. We don't really know about it. There's people that understand and know about certain things that are happening or that, like, there's just so much unknown. And what I understand is that we're supposed to just be like we're in this opportunity to create something new, like to create and expand and be able to visualize and see ourselves in a better space, in a better, higher, happier, cleaner vibration. Like we're in that kind of a space where we really are manifesting much than, before. Okay, I want this. And it'll take like a long time to get here because, I don't know, but it feels like you something and it's here. You think something, you feel it, and boom, it's already, that feels like that's, I don't know if it's the energies that are moving that are faster that's bringing that, or the awakening, the awareness of people, or what is that?
What you're referring to is what loosely is called the age of Aquarius. And that's where we are. And, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we were singing songs about the age of Aquarius and all that sort of stuff and talking about it. And we're like, oh, we're all new age and we're in it and we're here. And it really wasn't here yet. We were just sort of rolling up to it, but now it's here. And it really cemented itself in November. And it'll be here for the next 20 years. Aquarius is the archetype that represents time speeding up. And so it feels like everything's coming at us all at once. And it feels like we always have to multitask now. And things get dropped because we're not designed to multitask. We're learning how to do it. Some of us think it's fun, but most of us don't. And it's like, I don't like this. So by the end of the day, we're exhausted. We just want to zone out.
Yeah, I find it very overwhelming. I used to be a really good multitasker, but yeah, it's just, and I don't, yeah, somebody said that we're not meant to multitask. Like we don't, we're supposed to just focus on the one thing. And then we went through this phase where you're super mom and you work and you get the career and you run the house and you get all the kids, right? And you go into fry mode. Yeah, I just can't do it anymore. I can't do those things. I just get overwhelmed by email and the social media. And it's like, it's just so much.
You like, just don't know where to start. I know. I'm doing some work with a woman who's really good at the strategy planning. She's a bit of a image consultant rebrander. She happened to have been somebody I've worked with, and now I might be working with her. And the way that her brain works, she's already charted out 2025. She's got all her social media posts done. She's got this, that, and I know. I just looked at her and went, do you not have a life? And of course she does, and she's busy, and she has friends, and she has a dog to take on walks, but that's just the way her mind works. So this age of Aquarius, this innovation, really suits her mind very well. Whereas stopping and slowing down and feeling what you feel is not her cup of tea. She's learning how to do it, but it's not as easy as other things are for her. So she's the inverse of the majority of us who are like, I'm sorry, social media post? What? I'm still trying to get through my emails from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So,
and all the different platforms, right? And so I just, it's incredible. I mean, maybe the younger kids, because they're growing up with it and we're just learning it as adults. It's a lot.
Well, age is playing a role simply because it is not hardwired into people of a certain age, whereas children who are born today is kind of like, You know, they have a phone growing out of their hand, and that's normal for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way it is, and that's just the generation. So that's what we're moving into, which is really the age of innovation, technology, AI, and all these kind of really cool innovations that we're going to have to learn how to manage. Otherwise, they're not so cool, right? So we'll make mistakes until we get it figured out. But that's what this age of Aquarius, among other things, is designed to do. Is the archetype of Aquarius says, whatever you've been conditioned to do, stop it. End of story. So if you know any Aquarians or people who are highly influenced by Aquarius, they don't like to stick around and stand on ceremony. They like, oh, this is new. Oh, this is adventurous. Oh, this is unknown. And I'm like, oh gosh, there's only so much of that I can take before I have to, take a nap and then try it again. But for them, that's their lifeblood. That's what they live for. So they are the leading edge of this pole, of this sort of backdraft that's pulling us all forward. But it's no longer just pointing to a generation and saying, yeah, the generation between now and, I don't know, between now and age 28, yeah, they're all hardwired for this. We can't just look to a demographic and go, yeah, that's what's happening with this generation, because it's global, which is another reason why people are feeling the shifting sands, because this energy is with all of us. So unless this energy is endemic to who we are, it's foreign to us, and we're trying to catch up.
Yeah, like it is interesting how when I was younger, Russia, what was happening over there, like that was a whole other world, right? Now, whatever's happening there feels like it's in your backyard. Like there's a
Correct.
shift there as well. I feel like we're really seeing the attachment that we're all, they say we're all one or whatever. And we're like, how can that be? We're all separate. But it feels that real that as well.
It has, and it's frightening for a lot of us who have grown up with those kinds of boundaries, because those boundaries, for some people, it's like, well, I'm going to go visit Russia anyway. Okay, great. Okay, so you can fly across the boundary. That's cool. But for most of us, the image that we have in our mind of boundary creates safety. And that safety produces a sense of security for us that then enables us to anchor to that place and then go about other things that we want to do. But now those boundaries feel porous, even on the inside. And so that's part of the shakeup that's occurring. Just like you said, feels like Russia's in our backyard. And it's not just because the internet is bringing everything closer right here, right now. It's a global vibration because of this shift.
So where are we going? Where do you see our world going? Do you have like an insight as to the world age of Aquarius? So here we are, they're singing about it's supposed to be really great. Are we coming into a really great space?
Ultimately, but right now we're in quite a shift, and I just wrote an article for one of my websites, so I'm of course looking it up so I can grab the link. And I don't know how quickly I can get it, but
Right.
Give me half a second and I'll get it. All right, typing it in. Let's see if it's going to be accessible. And I've already pulled it up once this morning for somebody who had the same question. There are the articles, and I can throw a link in the chat to the article, which is called 2025 and Pluto in Aquarius. In Chinese astrology, it's the year of the wood snake. If you know what animal you are in Chinese astrology, you can match up.
I'm a seahorse.
I got it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is dump it in the chat. There it is. That's to the article. Then you can have that. But it's really talking about this as a year of shifting. The last time we were in a shift like this, we were in the middle of Woodstock and the hippie generation and, Bob Dylan and JFK and RFK and Martin Luther King and all those people getting wiped off the planet, and all those shifts that then moved us into another shift, which was 2008, which moved us into taking a look at our structures and what wasn't working. And so, we had a banking collapse and we had a revolution. And so between 2008 and 2023, it's what I call the demolition phase. Now, between 2023, because this just really shifted in November of last year, which was 2024, but it started in 23, to 2044 is a renovation phase of our global community. So we are renovating all of the structures that are not working for us. And so that's the decluttering that's going on. We're taking a look in our cupboards, in our pantries, within our lives and going, or at least should be thinking about saying, what doesn't work for me anymore? And a better way of saying this is, what has value for me? What in ways is this thing, whatever it is, contributing, or this person contributing to my life? Do I want to maintain them in my life in the same ways I've been maintaining them? Or do I need to shift the way I'm interacting with them? So we're looking at these higher level or higher order kinds of strategies to determine how we want to move forward. So it's not just about, okay, in order to move forward, you're going to do A, B, and C. It's being reflective and understanding what's contributing to your value and what makes your life happy. Because if you think your life is happy and it is, great, keep it. If something isn't working, try to identify what in your life is not working. Well, I'd really like to shift my diet and my nutrition. I need to just make this little shift, and then, gosh, it made me feel so much better. Now it enables me to do all these other things I haven't been able to do. I'm going to add that into my life. So this is a time, and it's not just after the new year. This is when we look at all these things. It just happens to coincide with this shift. I think we'll see some governmental implosions, things that aren't working well, particularly in the Middle East. I think we're not done yet, even though there's been a ceasefire called. I think it's very tenuous at best, and I think we're going to have to revisit some of the Middle Eastern governance bodies that have been riding on a razor's edge. And now that the ceasefire is here, it gives everybody a collective pause to go, catch your breath and go, okay, now that we're not all guns blazing 24/7, let's take a look at how you've been running things. So some of that will shift as well.
I've got something beeping. I apologize about that. You know what? It's think that things can shift, because the way that it is right now is, I mean, it's scary. It's not good. It's toxic. It's our relationships, are the divide, all of it. I know that I live in fight or flight, and haven't recognized that that's been a lifelong thing that's happened for me. But what I realize is that that's happening for a lot of people, and that kind of, it's how none of us are feeling. Okay, so I believe that we're here to learn how to love ourselves, and like, how do we even do that? Like, people don't know how to we don't know how to love ourselves. How do we love ourselves? You go in, you meditate, you go to church, you do this, you do that, but like, to have kind of peace within, and yeah, I bet to understand what we need to do to have that feeling within. I think
Right.
that information isn't really talked about. Like, it's because it sounds kind of silly, right? Like, how do you love yourself, right?
It sounds a airy fairy, but it's not in the least airy fairy, which means that the more we discover about ourselves, the more we can choose to accept what is. And the more we accept what is, the more self-love automatically comes from that. So if you want like an easy 3-step process, which is almost an oxymoron when I say easy, the more we learn about ourselves, the more we just recognize this is where we are right now. This is the reality that things are. We don't have to like it, but it's just the way it is. And that induces a certain amount of peace. So let's repeat that. I see the world the way it is. I accept it the way it is. I do wish it were different. And as I say that, I'm feeling, at least within myself, my body's slowing a little bit, my brain waves are slowing a little bit. Doesn't mean I'm peaceful and calm, but I'm coming to a place where I can feel the unwind happening. So by recognizing, yes, this is the way things are, I then begin to ask myself some questions, and this is what I have learned from the modalities I'm involved in. And so I always try to pass this on to people. By asking the right questions, you can advance yourself quite a bit. This is an acceleration process that we're in anyway. Pluto in Aquarius for the next 20 years speeds things up. And I said it gives the effect of making it feel like we're having to multitask because time is moving so quickly. And that's because this is an acceleration period, because we're done with the old. We have globally closed the chapter, and we're starting on a new chapter of the unknown. So that brings uncertainty. but we have to move forward with that kind of Aries courage despite what we don't know. And we have to place one foot in front of the other. So by asking ourselves to go back to what I was saying, the right questions, I can say, okay, this is the way the world is. And we've talked about that already here today. It's not a very pretty sight in some ways. Yes, we can choose to focus on only the positive, and we can do that and engender more of that and manifest more of that. And if everybody on the planet did that, we probably could shift. But since everybody on the planet's not doing that, and there's just some of us doing that, we still have to do our own work. We don't have that mass consciousness developed yet where we can achieve maximum threshold and volume and go, let's all think the same thought. Let's all have it be this thought. And let's do it all at 6 p.m. this evening, whatever our time zone is. And therefore, we'll take an evolutionary leap forward, which we could do if we could coordinate all that. But since we're not, and we can't, we come back to asking ourselves the right questions, such as, what's my role in this world as it is now? Whenever we're asking about what my role is relative to something, some situation, something that you have in your mind, you're always bringing yourself back into accountability. That has to be the starting point each and every time, over and over and over again. What's my role in this?
Asking the right question, Annie, is so it is so important. I used to ask myself the wrong question. What did I do? I must have really screwed somebody over to get this. Like asking, not asking the question. I'm just asking and getting more of something. So
asking the right question is, what's my role in this? And this could point to the argument I just had with my spouse. The great thing that happened with my daughter at school. I mean, it doesn't have to always point to something negative. What's been my role in my daughter becoming valedictorian of her class? You can find answers for that too. So keep it neutral. Do not weight it into the bad thing dumpster or the good thing platform. It's neutral. So by doing so, you can remain in balance and pivot when you need to by asking yourself, well, what's my role in this? What would I like my role to be? Which is really tapping into a purpose, which is really tapping into your soul's pathway in this lifetime. Most of us do have the capability of doing that. Some people will say, I want to be a leader. I want to be on the forefront of this movement. Okay, that's a lot of your purpose. It may bring a lot of your own psychology with it, like, I have to be an advocate for social justice because, which is probably tied to 10 lifetimes ago, who knows, whatever. That's going to be a part of it too, and that's okay, as long as you know that. It'll probably be a part of it. Will the content ever drop in for you and articulate itself? It may not. It's upon how much of a detective you want to be. What's my role in this? You have to determine what makes you happy first. Because for some people, what makes them happy is sitting on a white sand beach, watching their kids play in the ocean on their plastic inner tubes. For other people, their level of happiness is going out for a great meal with somebody that they're newly dating. For somebody else, and you can see it's going to be different for everyone. Other people, it's like having an hour to themselves in the evening to meditate, and the cats and dogs are all peacefully asleep. Everybody's quiet. There's no TV on, and you're listening to your favorite music. You don't have to return emails to the morning. So it just depends upon your definition of what makes you happy, which will then define where you want to focus for your role.
So
what makes me happy? And
so
what's my role in that?
if we ask the question daily to ourselves, then we were looking after ourselves, and that would be a really great place to start for self-love, because then we're honoring ourselves by asking and then taking that. Do you know what I mean? I think as a mom and a busy, to ask for me, you're taking care of everybody else, and at the end of it, you're exhausted, and you're like, and so asking the question to yourself every day, that would be a good morning ritual.
It most certainly is. And I really tried to ask myself that, what's my role in this thing that went well? what's my role in this thing that got snafu'd? And it eventually, for me, always leads me back to my own resistance, to my blind spots, to the things that are repetitive patterns, to what I keep tripping over. But it points them out to me so that I can work them.
So the hypnotherapy then, when you're doing that, you're able to just see and you're able to understand and talk that through. Are you then in some kind of some seeing that, then you're able to release it, right? You see it, feel it,
For the
feel it.
most part, yes. And
You program in something new, like something new kind of pattern to.
that is what 95% of hypnotherapists will do. They'll give you a new thing to focus on to create a new habit pattern. I don't always do that. I believe is facilitation first, second, and maybe even third. So it's my infrastructure, but it's your content. So when you shift because you had an aha or an insight, which is the rewiring process itself, you automatically expand your own self-awareness, and suddenly your resources, the resources had before that felt limited, suddenly feel more expanded to you. And you suddenly go, oh, you know what? Here's what I could do, or I think I'm going to. So I support someone in their new awareness because it almost comes to them immediately as to what they want to do differently. That's where I want to support them.
Love that. I love that. Wow. So we have a lot to talk about with the past life regressions and life in between lives. Like that's just amazing, and I love all stuff. So I did see a long time ago Brian Weiss.
You got to see him in person?
I did. Yeah, Wayne Dyer, and it was the first time I watched it. But he put the whole into a guided hypnosis, and literally we could smell. I could like everyone was smelling something different. Me and my girlfriend were there, and she was smelling the plastic of her dad's plastic garbage plant, and I could smell a lilac tree coming through. It's really powerful. So, yeah.
I
Yes,
love it.
he's a Brian Weiss. Is his
Oh, sure.
story.
Yeah. He's I think about 80 years old right now. I think he's still
Yeah.
around. I'm doing his thing. And Michael Newton is another one who developed an institute, the Michael Newton Institute, to deal with past life regression. And he's not this, but he is his institute wanting to ground people in their way of doing the past life regression. And I think guidelines and tenets, but I don't think there is any particular one way. It's just that they brought it into the mainstream, for sure.
And the benefits about or doing that kind of work is really profound, isn't it?
It is life-changing, is what I have to say. I've had people come to me in hypnotherapy for something they thought they needed to change or to fix, and then they somewhere in there end up doing or spilling over into or accessing a past life, and that just changes everything for them. It changes their focal point, it changes their goal set, it changes what they thought they knew, really changes their reality in a good way. But it does take a little bit just to kind of get your head wrapped around that shift. Just because, imagine you've seen the world one way all of your years, and then you have one little piece of data that drops in while you're in a hypnotic trance state. And unless you want to deny it or rationalize the heck out of it, you've got to find a way to incorporate it into your life that makes sense. And that just sometimes sets people on a different path.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's my thought. Like as soon as we have that kind of knowledge and awareness, it's life is different. It's
You can't.
right. I love that. Don't you love that? Once you
I
see
do.
it and see it, it's like, oh, I get that now, right? It's like the whole people, lots of friends that don't believe that, and even my dad, like you're just having life. They just don't, they their head around the fact that that's a thing.
And that's okay. I will still work with that because your dad has memories of earlier in this life And, not all those memories are accessible to him. And so hypnosis is useful because it can access those memories. It's like a Library of Congress, it's like the archives of your dad or of whomever. And so you have your own personal librarian, and they'll share these files with you. And usually when people say, hey, I want to stop this behavior or I want to achieve this goal, like, okay, great. And they say, yeah, I think I had an event once, and I was in my 20s. And ever since then, I've not been able to whatever. Well, it turns out that has nothing to do with what they think is their impediment, but really something that happened much earlier on they've just completely forgotten about. That's normal. And they'll end up after the hypnosis series by saying, I had no idea that thing was still bothering me. So that's the shift, even in this lifetime, that then sets that individual on a new path toward being able to achieve what they wanted to, because it was just outside of awareness. So whether we're doing past life work or whether we're doing hypnotherapy work from this lifetime, it almost doesn't matter. It is the knowledge that you are expanding your self-awareness. And when you expand your self-awareness, you automatically cause yourself to evolve, which then either accelerates your trajectory, changes your trajectory, or causes you to do things differently, i.e. stop doing what you didn't want to do and do what you do want to do, causes the institute of a new habit easily that of course you'll want to work on reinforcing, because the mind wants to give you reasons why you shouldn't be doing this, because that's the mind's job, is to be the grumpy old guardian of what was and not what is or what's new. And so, yes, we do need to reinforce those new habits. But I also teach people how to do some self-hypnosis and reinforce those habits for the rest of their life. So it's all part of that package. So you don't have to go to yet another place to figure out how to reinforce the new habits, in other words.
That's really cool. And I do like bringing the brain into the lower delta waves, like the Heart Math Institute and
Right.
just doing the wave diary work and stuff like that. Wave diary work and Joe Dispenza work. They all are trying to shift your into that lower, because then I guess that's where the instant healing happens and stuff too. That's where those miracles.
That's where awareness happens, and awareness leads to healing.
And so the stories that we're holding on to, well, I have this because my mom had this, and as soon as we get an awareness or we're able to see ourselves doing that, because we don't know that we're really doing that, like it's my cancer or my disease, right? We're then owning it, we think it's ours, bagging it around, right? We don't realize, we don't have the understanding that we're see ourselves that is making sicker by understanding and holding. And sorry, I get like all it just my sister, right, with what she's through, and understanding that as soon as we can see and drop that story, like you're saying, all of a sudden that sickness isn't, we're not holding that energy there anymore. That story
Releases.
It really does. Like, and it's hard. It's hard for somebody who's hasn't done that work, and to understand that that's what happens. It's just that shift happens and your cells shift, and like, it's really profound what can happen in that space.
It is, because it's shifting at all the levels that you don't see, as well as the levels that we do talk about. The conscious mind, subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, the body patterning, the DNA. It's like a spiral. It's not a circle. It's a spiral. And so not only are you going around and around, but you're changing levels up and down as well. And so the folks like Hicks and Wayne Dyer and all the manifesting crew and the Joe Dispenzas, all those people that have such large audiences, they're all talking about the mind shifting, and they each have a different approach and a different modality which helps the mind shift. So whatever you resonate with is great, as long as you're shifting.
Well, and I think that the education of happening, right? Like they explain, okay, this is where you're holding the body. This is how that's, and having that knowledge and understanding of what it is that we're doing to ourselves I think is so big, so important, and who don't want to know about that? Like, you know what I mean? Like
I
the
can't imagine that.
I know how like here in this incredible freaking universe. Like, what are the heck are we here for? Right? We're flying around the universe on this little planet. You know what I mean? It's just really, if we think about it, but we don't. We just
Most people don't.
no.
Most people are like, when I talk about this in some of my networking groups, they just look at me like I've got two heads every single time, even though I've been talking to them about it for 4 or 5 years. They still give me that deer in the headlights look. And I'm like, huh, I wonder if I'm not explaining it well enough. But it's not that. It's their level of awareness has not reached a stage where they can recognize my words.
Well, and do you think it's just because it's not talked about? Like, it's not, people don't talk about it. It's not taught. Like, you have to go search for it, when you're to help yourself with the doctor and the medication, and
That's
you know,
part of it. But here's another part of it. And this comes from evolutionary astrology. So I'm going to draw from that paradigm, which understands that 80 to 85% of the world is in a state of soul development that's called consensus. So the names that I'm going to give to it are meaningless. Think of it as you start in preschool, many of us, you start in kindergarten, you go to first grade, you go to second grade, you go to third, middle school, you go to high school, blah, 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 blah. And so 80 to 85% of the world is in a particular grade range in terms of their soul development, which means they're going to see things from a certain perspective. They're going to respond with a certain amount of predictability, and that's all there is to it until they evolve. The next set, there are about 15% of the world's population at any given time in what's called, again, relying upon the EA paradigm, an individuated state, meaning these people have moved away from consensus. They're beginning to think for themselves. Some of them are very rebellious. They want to burn everything to the ground and start all over. They think that's the way to go. Because they are feeling their oats. They're feeling empowered. They're feeling differently than when they were in a soul state that said, whatever somebody tells me I got to do, I'll just follow the leader and I believe what they're talking about. Now they're thinking for themselves. That's about 15% of the world. Another 3 to 5% of the world's population is in what EA labels as a spiritual state. And by the way, there are 3 levels to each of these states. And so 3 to 5% of the people are living in a state where the internal balance point has shifted from ego to soul. Now we're doing things that are more of service to others. Now we're interested in all these concepts that you and I have been talking about. Now we're talking about the value of personal responsibility and accountability, and we create everything in our lives. And we've been doing this for a very long time. Now, those possibilities of multiple lives and so forth, the doors are open, and it makes sense to us. When we're in these states such as kindergarten, second grade, third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, the concepts are not there because the mind has not developed to such a degree where it can embrace those concepts. But as you get a little bit more mature and older, you can get more complex concepts down. Just think of it like an education. So all of us are in different levels of soul education.
That makes really great sense. Thank you for sharing that, because you want them to know what you know, but they don't. Yeah, you can't. That they're not ready for. So
if you try to share a concept, you have a kindergartner and you have a junior in high school, and you sit them both down and you share a concept, the junior in high school might, or secondary school, might go, yeah, interesting. And the kindergartner is going to go, can I go potty? I have to go potty. What's for lunch? They're just, their space is different.
right.
They will not understand what you're talking about. So when we understand this, we can remove ourselves from judgment, which When we're judging others, we're certainly judging ourselves. And this incurs more karma. This keeps us in a repetitive pattern. When we can stand back and see more neutrally, oh, this person's in a different grade level, which is just a good analogy to look at it, then you realize they're not going to hear me. Not with the words I'm using, maybe not even with the concepts. And we have people in our families and friend circles who are at different levels, which is why people are very cautious sometimes about going home for holiday, because they realize we can't have a political discussion at Thanksgiving or whenever that is for us, or at Christmas time or in other holiday times, because an argument brews and are going to have lots of yelling. Why? It's not because people have different preferences, although they do. It's because they're seeing things from a different perspective and they want you to see it the way they see it. Because when you are in a more advanced spiritual state, you've been where they are, you can look back. You have hindsight. When you are in a developing grade or developing soul state, you can only look forward, but you haven't been there yet. So you don't have anything of relevance that you can bring back that relates to your story now. Your story is just your story. You have nothing to look back upon. And most people are in that herd or consensus state where they only have one another to interact with. There's just, if there's a future, it's, wow, that's fantastical. Wow, all you woo-woo people. Wow, all you new age people. Wow, all you folks talking about past lives. Unless the soul has come into this life with a real knowing and a feel for past life, and that's okay with them, they are going to think you're pretty wacky.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. So that removes that.
Aquarius, will people wake up to, well, there's more than having this shift, you're saying. So will there, is there that shift, like there, people will start to able to understand
Yes
that?
and no. Meaning, yes, we're in an accelerated time of shift, but you can't rush soul development. That's why it takes thousands and thousands of lifetimes. You just can't necessarily expect someone who's in a consensus state or in kindergarten or first or second grade to all of a sudden now be at an 8th grade level. That would be unrealistic.
Well, I think that that's really powerful information, right? Because I think what happens is each person, they're trying to, you're saying, share their perspective, and the person's not, they don't understand, that person just can't understand it. Like they're not understand what it is that you're trying to share. So
that's correct.
So then that person, instead of going into judgment and being like, oh, well, which is what happens, and then it affects the person whom it's just a whole big toxic mess then, right?
Yeah. So think about the people that you know are in what we call a consensus state. Their natural coping mechanisms, their defense mechanisms to keep themselves safe, to keep their lives consistent, are shame and blame. So when you run into people who are finger pointers, this is not working because that guy over there didn't do his job, that's reflective of a particular state of soul development. A more advanced state of soul development would be someone who says, yeah, it's not working because I threw a cog in the works and I was pissed off. I didn't want that thing to happen. So, yep, I blocked it. I got in the way of it. Even though that sounds pretty self-centric, and it is, that person, why something didn't work, because they feel like they're the ones that tripped it up. Now you get somebody who's in yet a more advanced state of soul development, who's looking at this situation we're talking about and going, I wonder what my role in that was. You see how the focus is different for each of the states of soul development. And what we choose to focus on will lead us to things that we consider answers. The people, 85% of the world, who are in the shame and blame, that's kind of where they're going to stay until they realize, there could be a different way to look at this. but that's a whole evolutionary piece that their soul has to take on. They may have to live hundreds of lifetimes before they get to that place.
That was one of the questions that
It's
I learned.
glacial. It's glacial. Yeah.
I learned to ask myself that question, right? How can I see this from a broader perspective? Because I'm just having that understanding that I'm in fight or flight, my vision's now narrowed. And so when I understood that I was really asking the wrong questions and not really helping myself at all, by doing that, what did I do now? That's the wrong question. The question was, how can I, perceive and see my role in it? How can I, what is this? What is going on? What am I supposed to be learning from? What is my role here?
Let me give you a different example for people who are listening, because somebody asked me this question the other day, and I wrote her. I'll see if I can remember the answer, and that is, well, how do we know kind of what states people are in? And it's like, you don't know. You kind of have to interact with them. And as an astrologer, I can only observe and interact and then make some sort of reasonable assessment from that interaction. I don't just look at the chart and know. I can't know that. How would a person know, if you ask somebody, how did you come to know right from wrong? How did sort of how life works? Where did about religion come from? It's just kind of a general question. Somebody in a sort of rudimentary state of soul development is going to say, well, my parents took me to Sunday school. I learned about Jesus. And I learned about the Ten Commandments. Okay, cool. Nothing wrong with that. They're telling you where they learned about it. Somebody who's more advanced at a soul level is going to say, religion, organized religion? No. My church is the church of the streets. I'm a social worker and I go out in the streets every day and I help the homeless and the addicted folks. And that's where my church is. And that's where my service work is done. Somebody in even more evolved state of being is going to say, well, I just kind of know what's right or wrong. And I'm living my life as a spiritual entity, but I do have to attend to the material world of getting things done. And I don't have a church per se, because I see us all as a kind of oneness. And when things go awry, I'm always quick to ask, wow, how did this happen? And what is my role in that? And how can I contribute to an upscaling of the vibration such that we can all move forward together, hopefully sooner rather than later? You see the answer for the same question is very different.
It's very different. It really is. Yeah. I'm still working on those, being aware, making sure that, because when we ask, we're given, you are the answer. I find the whole, depth of asking and receiving is a very cool. I didn't know about really any of that, as are growing up but when you really get connected and you ask, you get the download, or I have been to experience that myself anyway.
You can get downloads. And again, this is back to your level of soul development as to what your downloads will look like. Some people will say, well, I went to confession. I talked to God. God told me to. That's a download. That's a form of a download. Somebody else is going to go, I don't know. I'm just going to go out there and make it happen, and I'll just see what happens. Somebody else is going to say, well, I took a little time to center myself and ask this question and, talk to my higher self and said, I really need some answers here. And we had a bit of a chat. We had a conversation. And you see, again, the different quality based upon the level of soul knowledge, soul self-awareness as to what those answers will look like.
Yeah, and then learning to start and what those answers are that are coming to you, I think is the next stage that I was experiencing, right? Just trusting my intuition, trusting that when I'm asked and I get this feeling that, no, that actually the truth instead of me, I think that whole judging or questioning, not trusting in that information that we are given.
You could say that that's a personality pattern that you're working on in this lifetime.
Yeah.
That is likely separate from your sort of soul advancement level or soul self-awareness. And it's a pattern you've brought forth that no matter what level the soul is at in terms of self-awareness, anybody could be working on the issue of trust. It's just that it will look differently depending upon how self-aware you are as a soul. When I say soul, I don't mean ego and I don't mean personality, because the soul in the EA model creates the personality, for better, for worse, as a filter for how we interact with the world. And so that's just all part of the spiral that I mentioned earlier about, okay, now I'm talking about something a little bit different, but we're moving up and around the spiral and up to a newer level here that may or may not make sense to people depending upon where you are in your own process of self-awareness.
Love that. Love that information. I just love that information because you think one thing and then to have some perspective come back at you to kind of just broaden that understanding. It's so cool. So cool. I really appreciate you hanging out with me today and sharing your wealth of wisdom. And I would love to get together again and talk some more after. I'm going to do some of this hypnotherapy with you though. And I'd like to do my full that you do because I think that it'd be really, really, really good to me to move through and understand a little bit more about how I can help myself move through the lower crap patterns.
It will likely help you accelerate your journey, and at the very least, for most people, it helps them get unstuck.
Yes, that would be
that
good. That would be good.
We've all been for a bit. And this shift this year is about getting unstuck.
Yeah, I think I'm really ready for that. I'd like to get moving in a different direction instead of where I have for the last, bunch of years. It's been very informational for myself. I really have learned a lot about myself, and it's really to see ourselves. It really takes reaching out and getting assistance, and you are an incredibly qualified person to help any of us to move through this really heavy stuff that we're holding in our body and making ourselves sick with. So I really, really am excited to see the shift that I get to experience, and I look forward to sharing that with our audience and viewers, and hopefully they will reach out and touch base with you, and they're going to do that. They're going to go to your website for that, Annie.
It's Northwest Hypnosis Center, and then it's Answers Through Astrology. You can jump on, sign up for a free consultation, both those places.
Yeah. Thanks, Annie. Take care. Have a good rest of your day.
See ya.
Thanks for hanging out and learning with me about how we can become the best version of ourselves. See you next time.